Here we are again, and what are we doing today, Gary?
We're gonna start putting the binding on the body.
Okay.
Since you were last here, I took the clamps off and trimmed the excess wood off the back, and I also installed the end graft, which is the first step in the binding process. Yeah, it takes quite a while to do that part, so I thought it'd be better to do it when you were not here, just so we could move on with this project.
That'd be a nice drum.
well, maybe if it fails as a Piccolo guitar, you could just turn it into a drum.
Very good.
So I was just going to take a minute and show you how I do this part, because I get a lot of comments about this because it's not straight, you know, it's a wedge-shaped thing. These are clamps that are clamped to the workbench to hold the body in place. And when I'm putting this tail graft in,
let's crank those real tight.
Yeah, let's not. It's always a balancing act, though, because I want to make them tight enough that it's not going to fall out, but
not tight enough
I really don't want to crack anything. But again, I just wanted to show you for a second. So I've got this thing that I made. I was trying to remember how I came up with it. I probably read about it somewhere in some journal, but it works real well for what I do here. Clamp it to the body of the guitar. This is another one of those things where it has to be just the right amount of tightness. And then when I have my wedge that I'm going to put in there, I'll kind of line it up with the center of the top and the back so I know roughly where it's going to sit. And then these pieces move in to basically right where the edges of that back graft are going to fit. And I tighten this down, and then I use a router in here.
Gotcha.
Let me reach across and show you. See the router, the bit goes in the gap, and then these pieces act as a fence. So,
do you want me to get that for you?
No, that's okay. Somebody else will get it. So the router just goes that distance, and then since it's wedge shaped, as you get closer to the top end, it doesn't travel very far.
Very good.
So that's the process I use.
Okay. Beautiful. Well, what do we do now?
All right, so now that the tail graft is in, the next part is to actually put the binding all around the top and the back of the instrument. Binding has more than just an ornamental purpose. It actually protects the wood on the edges. If you were to have an unbound body and you put a dent in the finish, broke the integrity of the finish, this part is known as end grain, where the end of the grain line is. End grain loses moisture, I can't remember, like 5 times as fast as the rest of the piece of wood. So by having binding there, you're actually sealing the end grain if there's any problem with the finish, and preventing cracking from developing. So at least in my mind, it's very important to put at least some simple layer of binding around the top and the back of a guitar. Well, I'm sure there are people who would disagree with me, but that's my approach to it.
It makes sense.
I've already bent the sycamore. This is just a couple of the pieces. So those are set to go. Got some nice figure in it, doesn't it?
That'd be cool. So
the next step, after I bend the outer binding layer, we want some decorative inner lines. These are strictly decorative, but these are in guitar building what's known as purfling. So I'm going to cut some strips of veneer that we'll use as
Oh,
inner
great.
lines just on the top side. The back, I think we'll just put the sycamore all the way around. Backs are often not nearly as ornate.